You ever notice how the same woman who once ignored your texts suddenly starts checking your stories the moment you stop reaching out? The same woman who swore she didn't need you now wonders why your name doesn't light up her phone anymore. Let me tell you the uncomfortable truth that no one else will say out loud. Women don't miss the man who bends over backward for them. They miss the man who walks away and never looks back. They miss the man who forced them to confront their own emptiness by no longer filling it for them. This video is going to shake you in all the right ways because I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to wake you up. Modern men are drowning in relationships where they are taken for granted. You give everything, and in return, you get crumbs. You show loyalty, patience, kindness, and it's mistaken for weakness. And until you stop, she will never start missing you. I want you to comment below with this phrase right now. No more crumbs. Write it. Because by the end of this video, those 3 words won't just be a comment, they'll be your new way of living. Now listen carefully, because what I'm about to share with you is not only going to change the way women see you, it's going to change the way you see yourself, your relationships, and your life. Number 1. Women confuse care for weakness. You give and you give and you give, thinking that one day she's going to wake up and realize the kind of man she has in front of her, thinking that if you pour enough loyalty, enough patience, enough kindness into her cup, eventually she will see your value and return it with respect and love. But the harsh truth that men need to face is that the more you give without boundaries, the more you are misunderstood as weak, predictable, and replaceable. Because in her mind, there is no scarcity in your presence. There is no cost to your devotion. There is no risk of losing you. And what human beings, especially women in relationships, value most is what they believe they can lose at any second, not what they can have guaranteed forever. This is why you see her chasing the man who doesn't text back, idolizing the one who barely invests, and dismissing the man who does everything for her because to her psyche, consistency without challenge equals no threat of loss. And when there is no threat of loss, there is no urgency, no excitement, no drive to invest back. She relaxes, she assumes, she takes you for granted. And this is where so many men trap themselves, giving without end because they believe that love is a transaction that will eventually balance itself out, not realizing that when you teach a woman that you will always show up, no matter how she treats you, you are conditioning her to believe that your effort is her entitlement, not your choice. Think about how often you've answered her texts immediately, cleared your schedule to see her, listened to her vent while she gave you no gratitude, and the whole time she looked at you not as a strong pillar of a man, but as a man who needed her validation so badly he would sacrifice everything for it. And then you sit alone wondering why she doesn't respect you, why she rolls her eyes at your affection, why she pulls away when you try harder. It's because she has confused your care for weakness. She has misread your patience as desperation. She has mistaken your loyalty as proof that she can do whatever she wants without consequences. But here's where you flip the script. Not with anger, not with begging, not with explanations, but with a new standard of how you live. Because the moment you stop over-delivering, the moment you stop texting 3 times before she replies once, the moment you stop putting her at the center of your universe while she puts you at the edge of hers, that's when the shift begins, and suddenly the man she thought was permanently available becomes scarce. Suddenly the man she thought she could always lean on becomes a man she might actually lose, and that scarcity triggers value in her psychology that no speech could ever create. Imagine a woman scrolling through her phone at night, bored, half-heartedly talking to other men, and she goes to your name expecting to see the usual good morning text, the usual check-in, the usual just thinking about you. But it's not there. She refreshes. Nothing. She checks her notifications. Nothing. And now, instead of rolling her eyes, she's asking herself questions. Why hasn't he reached out? Is he busy? Is he with someone else? Did I push him too far? Because now you've shifted the dynamic. You've stopped teaching her that she can treat you however she wants and still keep you. And instead you've shown her that your presence was a choice she underestimated. And this is where men have to wake up. Stop thinking your value is in endless proving. Your value is in your ability to walk away, in your ability to set standards, in your ability to say no when your respect is not being reciprocated. Because a man who knows his worth doesn't beg for recognition. He doesn't explain his loyalty. He doesn't convince her of his value. He simply lives with standards that she either meets or loses. And the irony is that this is exactly what will make her start missing you. The very withdrawal of the overgiving that she once took for granted, because now her mind is hooked on the possibility of loss. Now your care is seen not as weakness, but as something rare, scarce and powerful, and you, as a man, must understand that your life changes the moment you stop pouring endlessly into someone who sees it as an entitlement, and instead redirect that energy into yourself, into your growth, your goals, your fitness, your craft, your finances. Because when you live like that, women stop confusing your care for weakness and start recognizing that your attention is earned, not owed. And that is when the power shifts forever, because now she knows the man she overlooked cannot be played, cannot be chained, cannot be taken for granted. And that realization burns deeper than any speech, because it forces her to confront the truth. She didn't lose a weak man, she lost a strong man she misjudged, and now she misses what she once mocked. And this is exactly why I put together the Stoic relationship blueprint, because too many men keep repeating the same cycle of overgiving, of being confused for weak, of being taken for granted until they break. And it doesn't have to be that way, not for you, not anymore, because inside this book is everything I wish I had when I was stuck in that same place. Every principle, every mindset, every step you need to stop living as a man who is overlooked and start living as a man who commands respect. And the best part is, once you get it, it's yours forever. No one can take it from you. You can go back to it anytime, in your darkest moments, in your toughest breakups, in your hardest reflections, and it will still be there guiding you, reminding you, rebuilding you. Because knowledge like this doesn't expire. And if you've ever asked yourself, why do I always get taken for granted? How do I stop being the man she walks over? How do I finally turn this pain into power? Then this book is your answer, and it's linked in the comments waiting for you right now. Number 2. She thought you'd always be there. She believes you are permanent, not because she has earned that security, not because she has honored you or respected you, but because you taught her with your actions, with your lack of boundaries, with your unconditional presence, that you would remain no matter what, that you would always be there waiting, patient, forgiving, loyal to the point of self-destruction. And this belief is not gratitude, it is entitlement. She assumes that because you gave once, you will always give. Because you tolerated disrespect once, you will always tolerate it. Because you forgave betrayal once, you will always forgive. And so she builds her confidence on your compliance, her ego on your loyalty, her identity on your predictability. She walks through life certain that even if every other man leaves, you won't. That even if she ignores you for days, you'll still answer in seconds. That even if she dismisses your feelings, you'll still show up for hers. And this is the tragic truth men must wake up to, that the more you prove your loyalty without standards, the more you prove to her that you can be taken for granted, that you can be used as emotional insurance, that you are a safety net rather than a prize. And here's the cold reality. She doesn't respect what she thinks she cannot lose. She doesn't value what she believes will always be there. She doesn't chase what doesn't move. And when you stay too long in this role, you become invisible in her eyes, background noise, like the hum of electricity in a room that only becomes noticeable when the power cuts off. And this is why men who finally decide to walk away cause such a violent shift in her psychology, because the very thing she dismissed, the very presence she took for granted, the very love she assumed was guaranteed, disappears, and now she faces a reality she never prepared for, a reality where you are not permanent, a reality where you have limits, a reality where her behavior has consequences, and that's when the regret starts to creep in, because absence reveals value in a way that presence never can. She begins to see clearly in your absence the things she refused to acknowledge in your presence. And men, this is why you must never train a woman to believe that you will stay no matter how she treats you, because the very assumption that you are permanent robs you of respect, and without respect, there is no real love, only convenience, only exploitation, only ego. So how do you flip this? How do you turn this pain into power? It begins with boundaries. It begins with standards. It begins with the courage to say no when you are disrespected. It begins with the discipline to walk away when your value is ignored. Because every time you stay when you should have left, you reinforce her belief that she can mistreat you and you'll still be there. And every time you leave when you should, you teach her that your presence is a privilege, not a permanent fixture. And imagine this for a moment. She sits there scrolling through her phone, used to seeing your name, your texts, your reminders, your support. But this time it's empty. This time there is no check-in. This time there is no energy from you. And suddenly her assumptions collapse. Suddenly the world she built on your predictability cracks, because now you are scarce, and scarcity breeds value. And this is where the shift in her mind begins. She thought you were permanent, but now she sees you are not, and the pain of losing you forces her to reflect, to question, to regret. But by then it is too late, because once you step into the reality of self-respect, once you taste the freedom of not needing her validation, once you start living with purpose beyond her approval, you cannot go back. And that is when you transform your life, because you stop existing as someone else's safety net and you start existing as your own foundation. And the irony is that this is when she will miss you most. Not because you tried harder, not because you explained yourself, but because you stopped trying. You stopped explaining. You stopped being permanent. And now she has to face the consequences of believing she could take you for granted. And men, listen carefully. The lesson here is not bitterness. It is not revenge. It is not hatred for women. The lesson is discipline. The lesson is stoicism. The lesson is learning that your power comes from your ability to walk away, to detach, to demand respect through action. Not words, as Marcus Aurelius said. You have power over your mind, not outside events. You cannot control how she treats you, but you can control how long you tolerate it. You can control whether you stay or whether you go. And every time you choose to go when you are being disrespected, you elevate your value, not just in her eyes, but in your own, and your life changes. Because once you see yourself as a man who does not beg for love, who does not settle for disrespect, who does not stay where he is not valued, you will never go back to being the man she thought would always be there. And here's the ultimate truth. The day you stop being permanent in her life is the day you start being permanent in your own strength, your own growth, your own purpose. And she will miss you not because you were weak and stayed, but because you were strong enough to leave. And that regret will echo in her life long after you have moved on, because she thought you'd always be there. But now she knows you never will be again. Number 3. The silence hits harder than words. When you stop speaking, when you stop explaining, when you stop chasing, when you stop reminding her of your presence, the silence becomes the loudest voice she has ever heard. Because silence is not absence. Silence is presence in a way that words can never achieve. Silence forces her to listen not to you, but to herself, to her own insecurities, to her own doubts, to her own regrets. And this is the moment men must understand. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strength. Silence is proof that you do not need to justify your worth. You do not need to debate your value. You do not need to fight for space in someone's life who has already shown you you are not a priority. And this is where men lose themselves, explaining, arguing, pleading, thinking. If they just find the right words, she will finally understand. But the truth is, she already understands. She knows your value. She just thought she had endless time to disrespect it. And when you stop speaking, when you stop showing up, she feels it in a way that no text, no speech, no confrontation could ever deliver. Because now her daily routine is disrupted. Now the pattern she relied on has broken. Now the emotional comfort of your presence has been ripped away, and silence fills the room like an echo she cannot escape. Imagine her waking up in the morning and checking her phone, expecting your good morning text, not because she cherished it, but because she assumed it would always be there. And it's gone. She scrolls, she refreshes, but nothing comes, and the absence starts to gnaw at her. She feels the weight of what she dismissed. She feels the discomfort of not knowing what you're doing, who you're with, why you haven't reached out. And suddenly, your silence becomes the most powerful statement you've ever made, because it speaks to her in ways words cannot. It forces her to realize you are not orbiting her anymore. You are not begging, you are not proving, you are not explaining. And the irony is that silence teaches faster than speeches ever will, because she cannot argue with it, she cannot debate it, she cannot twist it, she cannot deflect it. It simply exists, a void she cannot fill. And this is where men need to see the power they hold, because silence is not just withdrawal. Silence is control. Silence is reclaiming your time, your energy, your mental peace. Silence is standing firm in your decision that you will no longer waste words on someone who refuses to hear them. And here is the practical step. Stop texting first. Stop being her therapist. Stop explaining yourself when you get disrespected. Stop writing essays to prove your worth. And instead, let your silence do the teaching, because she will learn more in your absence than she ever did in your presence. And while she is busy wondering where you are, why you haven't called, what you're doing without her, you are busy living, building, growing. And this is how you win, not by convincing her of your value, but by showing her through silence that your value stands with or without her recognition. As Seneca said, silence is a lesson learned through life's many sufferings, and your silence becomes the mirror of her actions, showing her exactly what she created. And while she wrestles with regret, you step into freedom. And that is why silence hits harder than words, because silence is not empty. Silence is full of answers she never wanted to face. Number 4, ego versus emotion. She stands at war within herself the moment you stop giving her the endless supply of attention she once mocked, because her ego and her emotions are no longer in alignment. Her ego tells her you are replaceable. Her ego tells her she never needed you. Her ego tells her that she can get another man tomorrow, that you were always too soft, too giving, too available, that losing you means nothing. But her emotions tell her something different. Her emotions betray her. Her emotions remind her of the calm she felt when you were around. Her emotions remind her of the safety she had when you cared. Her emotions remind her of the small ways you made her feel chosen. And suddenly the very man she dismissed in pride becomes the man she aches for private. And this is the paradox of women who take men for granted. Their ego is loud, but their emotions are real. And when you stop showing up, the ego gets exposed. Because no matter how many stories she posts, no matter how many men she entertains, no matter how much she pretends she's unbothered, the emotions catch up. And at night, when the noise is gone, she feels the gap. She feels the absence. She feels the regret. And here's where most men go wrong. They try to argue with her ego. They try to prove her wrong. They try to get her to admit she needs them. They try to fight her pride with words. But you don't fight ego with debate. You defeat ego by not feeding it. You let her ego scream while her emotions suffocate it in silence. Because when you pull away, when you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, her ego loses its power and her emotions become louder than her pride. She tells her friends she doesn't care, but she's checking your page at midnight. She tells herself you're weak, but she's wondering who you're with. She tells herself she moved on, but she can't stop thinking about the man who finally walked away. And men, you must understand the deeper lesson here. Her ego is not your opponent. Your opponent is your own weakness, your need to fight for validation, your need to be acknowledged. Because once you master yourself, once you stop feeding her ego with constant attention and start feeding your own soul with discipline, growth, and focus, you flip the entire dynamic. Now she is the one at war with herself, not you. Now she is the one wrestling between her pride and her emotions. And this is where Stoicism becomes your ally, because a Stoic man does not chase recognition. He does not collapse when ignored. He does not demand validation. He lives by principle, by action, by strength. As Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." And you free yourself when you stop needing her to admit your value, because your value does not exist in her words. It exists in your actions, in your self-respect, in your boundaries. And the moment you internalize this, you become untouchable, because now her ego can scream all it wants, but her emotions will betray it every time, and eventually she will miss you. Not because you tried to convince her, but because you didn't. Not because you argued, but because you disappeared. Not because you fought her pride, but because you lived above it. And the irony is that this will torment her more than anything, because she will know deep down she lost a man who was too strong to be broken by her games. And you, in turn, will have transformed, because you no longer live to argue with egos. You live to build yourself into a man whose absence speaks louder than her pride ever could. Number 5, she starts comparing every man to you. When you finally walk away, when you finally stop pouring your energy into her bottomless cup, she tells herself she'll be fine. She convinces herself there are plenty of other men out there. She leans on the lie her ego whispers, that she can replace you with ease, that another man will step up and do what you did, maybe even better. But soon reality sets in, because every man she meets becomes a mirror that reflects back what she lost. She goes on dates, but the conversations feel shallow. She gets attention, but it lacks depth. She entertains new faces, but the connection is empty, because the truth is, no one else does it the way you did. No one else notices the small things you noticed. No one else carries the same patience, the same loyalty, the same reliability you gave so freely. And the irony is brutal. The very things she dismissed, the very traits she once rolled her eyes at, the very qualities she used to call boring or too predictable, suddenly become the gold standard, the measuring stick by which she compares every man who comes after you. And men, you need to let this sink in, because it means that by simply living as a man of substance, by giving without losing yourself, by showing up authentically, you set the bar so high that when you leave, the scarcity of who you are forces her to see what she lost, not when you were around, but when you are gone. And this is where your power lies, because while she is out there searching, you are no longer waiting. While she is replaying memories, you are writing new ones. While she is comparing, you are elevating, and that gap grows wider by the day, until her regret is not just about missing you, it's about realizing she will never find you again in anyone else. And this is why, as a man, you must understand your role is not to be the clown who proves himself endlessly. Your role is to be the king who lives by standards, who gives his loyalty carefully, who invests only where it is respected. Because when you live like this, you will be missed not because you manipulated her, not because you begged her, but because you were irreplaceable by nature, because your energy cannot be replicated. And here's the part that should make you smile. She may try to deny it, she may try to pretend, she may post pictures, she may laugh with other men, but in her quietest moments, when her guard is down, she will replay your presence. She will remember your patience, she will long for your steadiness, and she will realize that in chasing novelty she lost rarity and men. That is why you must always carry yourself as a man who is the standard, not the option, because the standard never begs to be chosen. The standard waits to be met, and if not, it walks away knowing that sooner or later, the absence of what it gave will haunt the one who thought it could be found anywhere else, because it cannot. Number 6. She posts, you don't react. When she feels your absence, when she feels the weight of your silence, when she starts to notice that you're no longer orbiting around her world, she does what countless women do in the modern age. She goes to her stage, her digital platform, her social media, because that's where she has always been able to control the narrative. That's where she can project the illusion that she's unbothered. That's where she can bait your attention without having to humble herself. So she posts a selfie looking her best. She posts a cryptic caption meant to sting. She posts a picture with another guy just to spark your jealousy. She does this not because she is truly happy or fulfilled, but because she is testing. She is fishing. She is waiting for that notification that says, you're still hooked, you're still watching, you're still under her influence. But then the shock comes, because this time you don't react, this time you don't comment, this time you don't send a message, this time you don't play the role you always played. And suddenly the very stage she used to boost her ego becomes a stage that exposes her insecurity, because every like that isn't yours reminds her you're not looking. Every comment that isn't yours reminds her you're not biting. Every picture that doesn't pull you back reminds her that her control is broken, and this is where her mask starts to crack, because the man who used to validate her without fail is now silent, invisible, detached, and that is more painful than any words you could ever say, because it tells her without saying it that you are no longer available, that you no longer need her, that you have moved on to a life where her posts don't matter. And men, this is why your indifference is more powerful than her performance, because when you refuse to play into her attention games, when you refuse to let her bait pull you back, when you refuse to feed her ego, you force her to face the emptiness of her own actions, and in that emptiness she begins to feel the weight of missing you, not because of what you said, not because of what you did, but because of what you didn't do, because the one man she expected to always react now doesn't, and that is devastating for someone who thrives on control. So how do you flip this in your favor? How do you use this to transform your life? You stop making women's online performances the center of your focus. You stop scrolling endlessly hoping for crumbs of validation. You stop living as an audience in someone else's theater, and you start living as the actor in your own. You build a life so full that you don't have the time, the energy, the desire to chase digital illusions. You build a body, a bank account, a mission, a brotherhood, a discipline, so solid that her posting doesn't even register in your world. And when she realizes that, when she sees you didn't react, when she sees you didn't notice, when she sees that her performance has lost its power, that is when the regret hits harder than anything, because now she knows she is no longer the center of your attention, and that is when she begins to miss you, because nothing haunts someone more than losing the man who once saw everything but now sees nothing. And men, this is why you must master indifference, because indifference is freedom, indifference is power. Indifference is the silent declaration that you no longer belong to her games, you belong to yourself, and that is when you truly win. Number 7. Regret creeps in during solitude. She spends her days pretending, performing, convincing herself and everyone else that she has moved on, that she doesn't care, that losing you meant nothing, that she is thriving, that she is living her best life. But when the night falls, when the crowd is gone, when the noise dies down, when the phone is silent and no one is around to clap for her performance, that is when regret slips in through the cracks. That is when the weight of what she lost presses down on her chest. That is when she scrolls back through old messages she once ignored. That is when she replays conversations she once dismissed. That is when she remembers the small, irreplaceable things you did that no one else has even thought to do. Because regret is quiet. Regret is relentless. Regret doesn't scream in the middle of the party. It whispers in the silence of solitude. It shows up when she least expects it, when she thinks she has escaped the truth, and suddenly she is ambushed by memories she cannot escape. She remembers how you noticed her mood before she even said a word, how you forgave her flaws when she didn't deserve it, how you showed up without needing applause, and the sting of knowing she overlooked all of it cuts deeper than anything else, because now she sees that the men around her don't offer the same patience, the same loyalty, the same presence, and she realizes she traded gold for dust. She realizes she lost something she cannot replace, and this is why regret is the most powerful teacher, because it arrives after the door has closed, after the bridge has burned, after the man she thought she could always count on is gone. And men, you need to understand this. Regret is not your burden to carry. It is not your responsibility to fix. It is not your duty to go back and ease her pain, because regret belongs to her. It is the consequence of her choices. It is the price of her taking you for granted. It is the silent punishment for her arrogance, and your role as a man is not to rescue her from it. Your role is to let her sit in it. Your role is to take that energy you once wasted on trying to convince her of your worth and redirect it into your own growth, into your discipline, into your future. Because the best revenge is not proving her wrong. It is proving yourself right. Proving to yourself that you never needed her recognition, that you never needed her validation, that you never needed her to finally see your value in order to know it. And the irony is that this is when she will regret the most, when she sees you thriving without her, when she sees you glowing in the success of your own path, when she sees that the man she dismissed became the man she cannot forget, because regret creeps in not just from what she lost, but from what she can no longer reach. And men, if you want to transform your life, you must stop fearing her regret and start fearing your own. You must stop living in a way where you will look back and say, I wasted years begging for someone who never valued me. You must start living in a way where you look back and say, the day I walked away was the day I was reborn. Because the truth is, you are not meant to be her safety net. You are not meant to be her fallback plan. You are not meant to wait for her regret to validate your worth. You are meant to live in such a way that her regret is inevitable and your peace is permanent. And once you embrace that, once you internalize that, once you live like that, you will never again be broken by someone taking you for granted, because you will know that her regret belongs to her and your freedom belongs to you. Number 8. Now you're the one with power. For so long she held the frame, she dictated the rhythm, she controlled the tempo, she pushed and pulled, knowing you would always chase, knowing you would always answer, knowing you would always bend. And in that dynamic she held the power, not because she earned it, not because she deserved it, but because you gave it to her every time you put her on the throne of your life, every time you made her your priority above your own goals, every time you abandoned your mission to serve her emotions. And that is why she never feared losing you. But when you finally walk away, when you finally reclaim your energy, when you finally stop living for her and start living for yourself, the entire power dynamic flips, because now she is the one wondering, she is the one checking, she is the one comparing, she is the one regretting, and you are the one building, you are the one rising, you are the one evolving. And this is the deepest irony. The very moment she thought she broke you is the moment you are reborn. The very moment she thought she had won is the moment you actually start winning. The very moment she thought she could do better is the moment she realizes she lost the best. And this is when you hold the true power, not the power to hurt her, not the power to take revenge, but the power to choose, the power to decide whether she even deserves access to you again, the power to build a life so full that her opinion no longer matters, the power to move with such discipline and strength that no one can ever take you for granted again. And men, this is the transformation you must embrace, that you are not powerless, you are not a victim, you are not destined to be overlooked. You are destined to be powerful if you are willing to stop giving your power away, because power in relationships, in life, in business, in every area, comes from options. It comes from self-respect. It comes from the ability to walk away. It comes from living in such a way that you don't need anyone's validation to feel whole. And when you get here, when you live like this, when you embody this, women feel it, they sense it. They respond to it, because now you are no longer the man who chases, you are the man who chooses, and that is when they miss you the most, because they can no longer predict you, they can no longer control you, they can no longer take you for granted. And men, let me leave you with this. The moment you realize that you never needed her to give you power, that you always had it inside of you, is the moment you will never again be broken by a woman's behavior. You will never again beg to be seen. You will never again tolerate disrespect. You will stand tall. You will live free. You will embody the truth that Marcus Aurelius spoke. A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions, and your ambition is not to be her permanent option. Your ambition is to be your permanent foundation. So live with that power. Walk with that power, and understand that the man who once gave everything away is now the man who takes nothing less than respect. And in that reality, you are the one with power, and she is the one who will forever regret losing it. And if you've listened this far, you already know deep down that staying the same will only cost you more years, more heartbreak, more regret. And that's why the Stoic relationship blueprint for men exists. To give you the exact roadmap to stop being the man women take for granted and start being the man they never recover from, the man who commands respect in love, in life, in every interaction, because this is freedom. And once you have this book, it's yours forever, your weapon, your shield, your guide whenever the world tries to break you down again. And I want you to prove to yourself right now that you're done living blind. So drop this phrase in the comments, I choose respect. Hit that like button, subscribe so more men like you can wake up to these truths, and then grab your copy in the comments below, because this is the knowledge they never wanted you to have. And the only question left is, will you keep waiting, or will you finally take back your life today?